Edward is an M&A advisor with over 30 years of experience. He helped grow a consulting division from 0 to 30 million in revenue in 3 years.
Any strength carried too far becomes a weakness. So if you're overly confident, you can think you can do it all.
Edward, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, obviously, just like so our audience knows, the reason I really want to bring you on today is because most business owners, when they start their business, they don't think about selling it initially. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because they're just so frightened of the challenge in front of them, which is to get sales, get cash flow, pay expenses, hire employees, validate the business concept. That it's overwhelmed. So I understand why they don't think about it, but they would be wiser to, because if you can start on the, if it's like if you're going to be into racing, if you get the right breed of horse, you have a better chance of winning the race.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with picking the right industry and the right, type of business.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like if someone's going through and starting up their business, and has more of the framework, I want to go through an exit.
Yeah.
Someday soon, I just want to build it to a point where that could happen.
Yeah.
What is that potentially saving them? Is it like time? What does that look like?
What it's doing is it's creating value.
Mm-hmm.
How much value do you want to create? I can't tell you. You can have two equally intelligent people, equally hardworking people, both start companies. One of them starts it in a small, for example, an IT managed service company, and the other one starts a laundromat. And I can tell you which one will sell for 3 or 4 or 5 times as much as the other, even though both might do $5 million in sales. There'll be very different valuations on that. So, but equal work. So it's disconcerting, when you find out later that you've picked something that's not as attractive to the market and won't have the valuations, even though, you worked every bit as hard as the person who's in a different industry with different outcomes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are those numbers drastically different, or how do those look like?
Drastically different.
Yeah.
Drastically different. Yeah. Even the sellability, the industry, in general, the buyers like certain industries are more attractive than others. And sometimes that is a fad and it evolves, but some are less attractive than others. As I mentioned earlier on the dry cleaning side, the downside would be with all the EPA regulations and worries about that. Also, everyone is dressing business casual or casual. So a lot less suits, a lot less dresses coming through the dry cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
So that, the business has changed. Yeah, hence the business has changed, right? So it's not the same market anymore. So pay attention. Don't be selling buggy whips when everyone wants electric vehicles.
100%. 100%. And I guess how can someone go through and predict? Because obviously I don't know how fast those markets go through and change for what people are looking to go through and buy, these companies at, and which industries. Are those changing pretty rapidly and quickly, or does it take a good amount of time where someone can go through?
Usually pretty slow.
Okay.
So it can take decades. So you can if you have a choice, you want to pick an industry that is more popular, if you will, that's liked by potential buyer suitors. So one day it's more sellable. That's one thing to consider. Another is reoccurring revenue. Create something that isn't project to project, so that every year you start out with a blank sheet of paper and you have to create all your revenue for the year. It's nice if you have clients that keep, repeat business, that keep coming back every month or every year, so that you can scale. So if I've sold you once and you're my client for 10 years and I keep adding new clients over time, I get massive amount of momentum, higher sales, more predictable revenue, less likely to lose the revenue. And that predictable revenue means larger multiples on the business valuation of your EBITDA. So, because I know that money's going to keep rolling even after you sell it. So an insurance agency is a good example, where an insurance agency that has sell property casualty, and with your own insurance, you probably have had it for a number of years, because as long as their premiums aren't going too high and their customer service is okay, you're not going to change insurance agencies. Well, that makes it very sticky and reliable, and a buyer likes to see that. So they know when I buy this company and they were doing, $4 million when I bought them, that they're going to be doing $4 million next year. Whereas if it's a project base, 100% what you eat and kill that year, you have to generate all that revenue like construction projects, and it takes 3 months or 4 months to do your work if no one gives you a new order in 4 months, you're out of business. There's no sales. That kind of business is much scarier for potential buyer, much greater risk, therefore much lower valuations. So if you can do the same amount of work but end up with a lot more money, that's probably a good strategy, right?
Definitely. Do you feel like it's more, just being wary of like the specific business to go through and get into, or more, because what you were just talking about, from my understanding, is the money model like surrounding like those businesses.
Yeah.
Is that like what they should be looking more towards, or just making sure that they're just getting into a business that like has that traditional money model surrounding it, like an insurance agency?
Yeah. The money models and a reoccurring model that it has stickiness with their clientele, the customers keep coming back, for your services. That's what you want to look for. And if you can create that in some industries, I've seen industries that weren't built that way, but if you're creative enough, you can model your business that way and build it that way, then you can be ahead of the game. I'll give you a simple example. Like in the gyms, memberships are $19.95 a month or whatever for most gyms anymore. Then they play the game of 80% of people don't show up. They forget their credit card's being charged, and they make very significant money for only the 20% that use the gym. And you can do the same thing like with a trampoline park, where all the parents buy memberships for their kids to come every month. They can come as many times as they want, and if you model your business that way, you can get all that reoccurring revenue and not only account on if the parents wake up and feel like taking their kids to the trampoline park that day, which is much more unpredictable.
100%.
Yeah.
So when some of these firms are coming to buy out these companies, like that's what they're more primarily looking for, is just like reoccurring revenue models.
Yes, it's less risk.
Yeah.
And it allows you, makes your business valuation higher. The market value is higher.
Sure.
So that's a big one.
Okay. Because it's like 30% of businesses are only able to sell, right? That go to market.
Yeah, it's about 30 to 40, that actually sell, and the rest, end up going out of business. So it's a really horrific rate of failure, even for an established business. And I've seen some real horror stories on failing to exit, even though people expect that because it's their company and they built it and it's and it has good sales, that it should sell. But oftentimes that's not enough, and they haven't thought it through or educated themselves.
Yeah, because those are some crazy numbers. I mean, because also from my understanding, out of those like 30 or 40%, again, like once it's gone through and acquired, what is it, like 40, 50% fail within the next year again?
Well, yes, you're right.
Which is also crazy.
No, which is also crazy. Yeah, there's a lot of bad mergers that go bad. In fact, I'll leave the company's name out of it, but I was earlier in my career, I was working for a very large consulting firm. Let's just leave it at that. And they had acquired a practice. I was in Boston, and they had acquired a practice in the suburbs of Boston, and that they were going to integrate and obviously continue to grow. All of the key people in that office in the suburbs, after the first 9 months, were gone. And it's a consulting firm, so it's only about the people. There's nothing there besides office space. But they did the integration. They didn't think about the cultural issues, like what's our culture, what's their culture, is it compatible? Can we get along? Can we agree on how we're going to work together? And then do you have someone leading that integration so that it's successfully, you're tying the pieces together and understand operationally and culturally, structurally, are you welcoming in? Are you building those bridges early before people just put their resume out and sail away to somewhere else because they just don't feel loved anymore, or they don't feel like it didn't go well, or maybe it was never compatible. I've seen situations, there was one here in Clearwater where there was a large distribution company that just distributed telecom components and things like that, and they acquired an IT managed service company, which is a solution sale, very long sales cycle, very much of a client relationship versus a customer on the phone. So, the majority of the business was pick up the phone, customer says, I want 5 widgets. Okay, I'll get the 5 widgets, be mailed tomorrow. Boom. That was the business model. And then you merge that with a consultative sale where I'm like, Ian, what are your issues and what is your 5-year plan and how do we integrate with? It's a very different sales cycle. And so they try to integrate the compensation and the sales, with the sales team and try to operate in the same modality. And that's oil and water. And that's usually a fail. And though that's a classic situation where it does not work.
Yeah. That's so interesting because I think that's the end goal for a lot of business owners once they've gone into their business a little bit.
Yeah.
And just so many of them fail like within that time frame, and then obviously like within the next 5 years as well, which investors are thinking about. So I guess what are some things you think brand new business owners can go through and start like implementing, just with that end framework in mind to like make it attractive for investors, but not even just for that, to make it easier on themselves so they can like just hold on to the business if they want as like a true asset.
Yeah. I think the secret sauce is don't be distracted by the big quick dollars. So you might get one sale for, I don't know, it depends on the scale of the business, but one big sale might be $30,000 and that's like a whale for for that new company. And so that's a whale client. But is it one and done, 30,000, and that's the end of it? So if you look at the lifetime value of a customer, the LTV, that's way more valuable to you. So I'd rather have that client pay me $1,000 a month and stay with me for 7 years or 10 years. That's the value is much greater. It's actually going to increase your market value. You'll sleep better at night because you can make payroll and all that rather than just hit the whale and then you have famine for the next umpteen months, right? Sometimes what looks like less success immediately because you're on a subscription model, whether it's $19 a month or $99 a month or $299 a month, whatever it is better for you in the long run than that quick, large chunk of money. But that client is one and done, and now you've made $30,000. Whereas if I had them and they paid me, $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year, and I've had them for 7 years or 10 years. What's that worth? It's a $120,000 client.
It's a lot.
So go there.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's interesting just to hear from like your perspective because how many businesses do you think you've helped with like the merger and acquisitions over the years?
Many hundreds. I don't have a full number, but prior to doing this, I started out in commercial banking. So I was at Deutsche Bank in commercial banking. So I learned the financing and the lending and all of that industry, and then financial analysis of P&Ls and creditworthiness of companies. And then I did a lot of risk consulting work and helped build a couple of startup companies from 0 to 120 million. And I was involved in business development for that company. And just in the Cleveland office alone, we grew that to over 12 million in 2.5 years.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And so all with Fortune 2000 clients, so we penetrated very quickly and got in there and established ourselves. So it's, so it's like combining all of those skills, a financial, the strategic, the negotiations, and putting it together as an M&A advisor. So that's what I've done for over 15.
Yeah. And where's the passion for that come from?
I love entrepreneurs. My dad was an entrepreneur. Some of my neighbors growing up were entrepreneurs, and I just saw how hard they worked, much harder than the average person, and how much they sacrificed, the sleepless nights, but worried about making payroll on Monday or going without a paycheck for weeks or months while their employees got paid because, they're trying to get the business started. And so, and the risk they take and the creativity they have to apply to come up with a new idea, new concept, new service, right? So I love that energy, and they're the backbone of our entire economy. There would be no United States without all the entrepreneurs who have built great companies from the Apple down and all that. Those are critical to creating, quality jobs for everybody. The government, any government jobs, feed off of that through taxation, but the real wealth is created by the entrepreneurs.
100%.
So they deserve to have a successful exit, and not, and some of them end up in poverty and retirement and whatever, as opposed to harvesting the wealth out of their companies. And so I really focus on helping clients harvest that wealth, because I really care about their outcomes.
Yeah, because there's too many people that sell themselves short.
Yeah, or they make very bad mistakes, or get the wrong advice, or one, for instance, is people make lots of assumptions, and I write about that in Exit Like a Winner, where they'll assume that I've been working with this accountant doing my taxes for the last 20 years, and working with this attorney who's done my legal document reviews for 20 years, that they're the right people to give me advice or help me when I go to exit my company. And oftentimes they're not. Does the accountant CPA, does he have business valuation experience? Does he begin to understand what the company is actually worth? Does your attorney know mergers and acquisitions, or are they good at just contract law or other types of law, but this is not their specialty? And oftentimes those can be disastrous consequences. But the assumption is, I've known them for 20 years. They've been been doing a great job with my taxes, or they've done a great job, with any legal documents I've had to review. So, they go where they're comfortable, but that was an assumption, and they made the wrong assumption. I see that happen oftentimes. So that's one of the pitfalls.
Which is so sad. Where do you think the entrepreneurship landscape is going to be going in the next 3 to 5 years with all the implementations of AI and AI agents?
Yeah, this is
buyouts, and how does that affect it?
Yeah, this is a huge period of change, right? So this is transformational for how the economy functions, and there's different pieces to it. But one interesting component is there's demographic decline happening in the United States, much worse in China, much worse in Japan, pretty bad, really bad, like in Russia's, really losing population. They're not reproducing at a rate which needs to be like 2.3 in order just to keep your population stable. In Europe has a lot of issues, but the people are saying, well, how are we going to survive and produce goods and services as AI? And now AI and robotics, there are things that can do to keep our GDP up and our productivity up with fewer people actually doing the jobs, because there's less population to do the job. So that's the upside. That's a very optimistic, great thing that can actually help. How do we take care of all the skilled nursing that's going to be needed in the future? And right, with AI, there's so many things you can do to supplement that and help monitor and help support people. So that's really exciting. On the downside, there are a lot of professions and coding and programming and all of that you can type in, a couple paragraphs, and I can say what I want, and it'll program some code for me. And that's frightening because of, people who have spent their careers doing that. So there's that variable too. So it's very, there's a lot of different components shifting and moving. So it will be a period of high change, but I think the net will be very positive when it all washes out. But it will be a period of, turmoil, because of people have to get retrained for new jobs, and, certain professions are going to be on the rapid decline and others will be on the rapid rise. And, and just all that change is always hard for people. There's a great book out there called, that I had read, called Deep Change. And in that book, they really talk about, our natural resistance to change, or at least for the vast majority of us humans, do not like change. So it talks about, understanding that dichotomy, and that's gonna be the hardest thing, I think, is the pace of change will be hard for people. But I think the future is very bullish. The amount of capital being invested right now in the United States, we're fixing our infrastructure, we're improving our energy policies, we're deregulating the country. There are so many great long-term seeds that we're planting, that the future, is incredibly bullish for the United States. And, I don't want to speak for the whole world, but I think it can be that way too. We'll have to see. But it's incredibly bullish right now. And so I think we're in a really great spot, but it's still not going to be easy.
It's just crazy to see how much it changes literally from month to month, from week to week, to from day to day now.
There's the difference between a noise and a signal, right? Mm-hmm. There's lots of noise out there. There's, this headline, that headline, this headline, that headline. But if you get past the noise, look at the signals, those things that are really changing, that are profoundly changing, that are important, what are those things? And if those things getting done, or are they the right things? And if those are getting done and they're the right things, then you don't have to worry about all the noise, because it's just like chatter and distraction and all of that. And so you have to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff on that, really, and get, to focus on the signals that really matter. Like, are we reducing our national debt? Are we rebuilding our manufacturing base in the U.S.? Like, are we doing the big rocks, the right things? Then don't worry about all the chaotic noise around it,
Sure.
because that can just distract you or worry you, unnecessarily.
Yeah, just raise the baseline level for everyone within the country and world, and then everything else will fall into place.
Yeah. If we do get the big stones in there and you're doing the right things, it's like you wake up in the morning, you're like, okay, I got to get my exercise, I got to take my vitamins, or you get your routine, sets you off. You do those things right. You don't put the news on and listen to how a plane fell out of the sky somewhere and how this or that thing happened, because that's not something you can impact or control. What can you control, and how can you maximize what you control, to the good?
100%. How for like the individual entrepreneurs that are trying to go through and make an impact and start up these businesses, like with thinking about AI agents, and thinking about building it to exit like a winner, just like, how do you think that's going to affect like buyouts, I guess, in the next like 5 years? Are they like more cautious of it if you just have AI within the business? Are they like more accepting of it? Just like, how is that looking like right now?
There is a lot of capital and to be invested in dry powder that could be invested into businesses. So if you have a good business concept and a good idea, and you've reasonably managed the risks of your business, that I think it'll be incredibly lucrative environment for new entrepreneurs. 2 years, 3 years, 5 years out, 10 years out from now, it'll be incredible what you can sell your company for and what you can do. If you want to sell it, or do you want to build it, or do you want to merge it, and you be the acquirer and you end up acquiring some other related companies. So I think that environment's going to be very, very positive. It's just early on, try to think, you got to worry about paychecks and payroll tomorrow. That hurts, and that's very aware. At the same time, I'd rather look for loan to value customers or clients, Bob, depending on how you want to call it, or patients. But, loan to value, look for that. Like, what's the lifetime value? Sorry, the lifetime value is what you're looking for. So look for that lifetime value. If I earn that client's business, and my average client stays with me for 3 years or 7 years or whatever the number is, and you look at that value and say, that's what it's worth to me, that $299 a month coming as a residual every month is worth a lot more to you, than that one-time $1,200 hit.
100%.
So focus your business on that and getting that reoccurring base, and sticky. A sticky company is like a CRM, right? A customer relationship management software system. Once I've got all my data and all my customers and everything's in there, and I've got my billing and everything all connected, if I own that software company, it's so hard for people to leave me. That makes me very sticky as a company, right? Because it's painful to leave, because you know everything, you got everything. It's hard to transition. If you can make your business stickier and more, you're so good at what you do, and you provide just the right service, and you take care of things, and provide them data they can't get elsewhere, and then like, well, I can't leave you. You're too valuable to me.
Too much.
Yeah. So so always be looking at those opportunities to make yourself, more valuable to your clients and more unique. Because they can get, if you're unique and they have a reason to keep coming back to you, and you don't have to resell them every year. You're so far ahead of the game.
Yeah. I think you bring up a really interesting point, because I think so many people are focused on like the short-term money. Like, how can I get cash flow in immediately right now?
Which I feel they're paying. Yeah. That's true.
Which is fair. But yeah, I guess the arbitrage is more in the long-term, like the LTV, like really just looking at what is the long-term value of the customers and the problems that we're going through.
The lifetime value. Yeah.
And I think that it does go around like the problems that are being solved and the value that's being added. So that's a really, really interesting point, because I think a lot of, at least the people I know, it's solving problems are probably a little bit more short term, and that probably just puts them in a death cycle.
Right. No, absolutely. You're right. No, you're absolutely right. You're right. Because you're short-term thinking and all that. So, we've all seen that, right? Where you had some bad customer service experience and you're like, for proving that they're right about $20 or $100, somebody like burned the bridge with you in your business relationship over some minutia, in the long term of things. But just because they thought they were in the right, that they weren't going to refund you that $100 or do whatever it was, and they've burned that relationship. Whereas it would have been so much wiser to think long term. What's the lifetime value of this customer's lifetime value is $8,000, and customer wants $100 back because of whatever reason. I'll just give them $100. I mean, why would why would I lose the $8,000 over proving I'm right over $100?
No, it's a really, really good way to look at it. That's just especially in the space of constant change and like innovation. It's like if you have those long-term customers and clients and are solving like those issues and just are making a sticky business, then regardless of the technology and change, like you will be protected. And you can build a system that like you can go through and exit as a winner, regardless of the technological advances, because you've like created a business that's more focused on the long term that technology can be implemented after.
And pick a business you're passionate about. Of course, you also want to weigh that with what is has good resale, it's marketable, so that when you build something, you can exit successfully one day. But also pick your passion, because you really, like I really care about entrepreneurs. Someone else really cares about food, or they really care about video, or they really care about whatever they do, their profession, like that. They're passionate about being the best at that. I mean, that's gonna shine. And then being authentic, there's not enough authenticity. So I think there's a lot of, especially even with AI, it's going to get worse. There'll be a lot of artificial things, and you're already seeing it. And you're like, you want to gag, and after a short time of exposure. So you're like, I want authentic. I want real people having real conversations, doing real things that really care about me, and it's not a bot who just told you they care about you.
It's like people are craving that human connection.
No,
that's really, really interesting. So I guess tell us what are you working on right now? Obviously, like we've gone through and looked at that, but just so like they know as well, what are you working on right now, and then what are you like trying to work on in the future?
In my business, I'm also implementing AI where it's relevant, and so redoing some processes and systems where it's beneficial, because you have to stay, current with where the tide is and where the opportunities are. So I'm doing that as well as I'm writing, updating my book as well, 2.0, and looking at some further enhancements and additions to the book. It's available on Amazon, on an Audible, and looking 100%. At upgrading it.
We'll throw that link up as well.
On that. So looking at doing that, and also, working with a lot of companies right now that I represent to get them successfully sold. Last year was 2025 was a boom year. Represented some great companies. One was a manufacturer, since CNC Precision Machining. They do work for everything from military aircraft to medical equipment, and we had initially over 400 buyers interested in buying their company. And what helped? One is the size. They had grown to a substantial size. Two,
which is how much?
Doing over 7 million sales. They have had good profits, and they also had the industry they're in. Manufacturing is popular and getting more popular. With the onshoring and bringing manufacturing back in the U.S. and all that. So a lot of people are like, yikes, I need to get my manufacturer. I need equipment. I need to be able to produce things, et cetera. So, so it's popular. More popular than ever, again. So that's
400 is a lot.
Right. So it's very exciting. So very exciting for that. Another was e-commerce company, in a niche industry that was some great products, and they serve and what's beautiful about their business is their clients are nationwide. So I can live anywhere, but because it's e-commerce, I'm not subject to the local economics of Michigan or Florida or Texas. I'm everywhere. So, you dispersed your risk. So that makes that business favorable.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So you worked on that in 2025. Yeah. Helped a lot of people go through and exit like their businesses, implementing AI, going through building out the book. Like, let's go even further, like 5-10 years from now. Like, what is that looking like for you?
For me, with Edison Avenue, it's continuing to grow the business and serve the clients, and I want to reach them. There's so my passion is I don't want to see any entrepreneur in the United States. That's my domain, I guess, but really globally. But go end up making fatal mistakes in their exit process, where they end up not receiving a fair value for their company because they've done so much work to build it. They don't have a pension. When they stop working, their income stops. That's it, and they're good. They better be good for life, and they can't rely on. They have no other means of support, and so they need to get it right. And they want to take care of themselves, their family, their grandchildren, their causes they care about, and things like that. And so they have to get it right. And so by reading that book, Exit Like a Winner, most of the companies can avoid a lot of the major pitfalls, and that's a great step one, because I knew I could never directly serve every entrepreneur in the United States. There's hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs, and I can never support everyone directly. But at a foundational level, it gives them a framework to avoid a lot of mistakes and to know the better the process they should go through and to make wiser choices as to when they should exit. Because many of them suffer for years. Like they might be in the business for 20 years and be like, should I sell this year? Should I wait 2 years? What should I do? And they agonize over it. And so I address that in the book too, to help them get clarity. Like, when should I exit? What's criteria? And with a business owner, an entrepreneur, it's not just business reasons, it's personal reasons, and those two tie together, and you can't separate them. And so you got to look at it holistically and say, what are we going to do, and what should I do, and when's the right time for me? And the answer might be you need to wait 3 years or 5 years. The answer might be you should go to market now. And so, but helping them to get clear on that, is a huge value add, and then avoiding all the pitfalls. And if they can do that, if they can avoid the pitfalls and harvest their wealth, I'm very happy, and I've succeeded. And so I plan on doing a lot more keynote speaking and addressing and getting through to entrepreneurs to help them.
It's an honorable mission too, just because it's people put their blood, sweat, tears, and some, and everything else into their.
And Ian, I know you've had a lot of sales success, and so when you're dealing with a customer and you've just worked very hard and you've landed that large new client, and that your energy's flowing, you just feel just like on top of the moon, right? And you're just like so charged. That's the way I feel in M&A when I help my clients sell their company, and I know their bank accounts just swelled, and to the tune of millions, and I'm like, I'm so happy for them, because that's what I want them to do, and and end on a high and get everything they need out of it.
What have been the biggest struggles for you personally, like along that journey, like helping people with that?
There's always, the interesting struggle is entrepreneurs, because they are so generally people who go into business for themselves are optimistic, because otherwise they wouldn't have gone into business, because they wouldn't have the confidence. And so there's an abundance of confidence usually, and sometimes, like any strength carried too far becomes a weakness. So if you're overly confident, you can think you can do it all. You can do it all yourself. You will never fail, and that can turn into denial. And so I've had entrepreneurs that I've talked to. One gentleman was 82, running a company that made custom automotive parts in St. Petersburg. Amazing. He patented them, great work. And he had semi-retired, hired a president to run it. The person he hired ran it for 7 years and ran it into the ground, did a horrible job. He calls me up, says, I want to sell my company. I said, you really hardly can. I mean, the financials are horrible, bleeding red ink everywhere. It's just really bad. And so he's like, well, I'm going to turn the company around then. And so he's going to launch a new product in a new industry. Well, he's 82. I said, how many hours a day can you work? He said, 4. I'm I'm like, so working 4 hours a day, you're going to completely turn around a failing company, and you're going to launch and go outside of automotive and go into the medical industry at 82. And your wife is at home, not doing well, and she needs a lot of your attention. That's called denial. Yeah. And I hate seeing that, because it's almost a never say die level of confidence, which can be also be a weakness, if we, so we have to, a strength carried too far is a weakness. And so we have to remain kind of humble and open to the fact that we may not have all the answers. We may be wrong this time, or maybe we do need help this time. And so, be open to that, be confident, but open, and stay open, that'll lead you through that. But that's the most heartbreaking thing for me, is to work with an entrepreneur in that modality, and they're like going to drive their truck right off the cliff, or they're going to keep working until they have a stroke or a heart attack, and then then they're incapacitated, and then their spouse is left to sell the business, and they don't know the business industry and the company, and they can't run it, and now it's a fire sale, and so you're not selling it for what it should sell for, and you're selling it for maybe half of that or less in a fire sale situation, and so now the family doesn't get all that equity and all the wealth that was built up in that company because you thought you were going to live forever. And so far, I haven't met someone or heard of someone who's actually lived forever, other than Jesus Christ. But short of that, it's not happening. So, but it's amazing. People still think they are going to live forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Just sad. It's because literally it could change all tomorrow.
Yeah. At any age, you hear these stories every day from people who are in the prime of their life, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is the thing that most frustrates me or worries me. And so I address some of that in my book as well, and helping them do this exercise where they do a framework and look at the different aspects of life, and look at how old they are now, and they check a bunch of boxes off, and they look at what the average age is for a woman or a man to die, and then they look at the math, and they can see how many years they have left. And oftentimes that's like very sobering for people when they realize, like, statistically, like, how short their runway is.
The average American lives to 74, 76.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, the female 78, things like that. So it just depends, but it's, they look at that and it's shocking for them, right? So, and that helps them maybe shake them out. And in my book, and one of the chapters, I'm very, very brutally honest with my journey and my life and what I've done and not done. And so I do a very vulnerable share. And when I do that, and I say, okay, now what are you denying in your life? Where are you not being honest with yourself? Where are you, lying to yourself, or just in denial, and not facing it? Maybe you have a alcohol issue, a drug issue. Maybe your marriage is broken on the verge of divorce. Maybe you're estranged from your kids. Maybe you have an addiction to gambling or whatever. Maybe you've got some other issue, and are you not facing it, and what you need to face so that you can make, with clear eyes, make a wise decision as to whether now is the right time for you to exit your company or not. And to make that wise decision, you have to have clarity, and you can't be like living in la la land. So you have to be honest, whatever that is, the good, the bad, the ugly. But I was vulnerable in the hopes of inspiring them to be vulnerable to themselves or their family, or decide for themselves, like, yeah, I'm kind of broken in this way, and how does that figure into my picture on when I should exit and what I need to do, so they don't get blindsided.
What's a question that like someone should ask themselves to just like make them more aware of those situations?
How am I lying to myself? Where in my life am I lying to myself? And we are all lying to ourselves. The humans have an incredible ability to, to decide what they want to think or believe, and then make up stories to support it. We all have that ability, me included. So we're all there. And some things are small things, like saying, well, geez, why can't I lose this 20 pounds? And it's like, and you're their friend, and you're like, yeah, well, I see you eat donut every morning for breakfast. Like, maybe start there, right? But they don't see it, right? And that's like a small lie, but they're doing it, and they can't understand. They're bewildered. Why? How could I not lose weight? Right.
Well, it's not a small lie from what we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Right. Or it could be
things.
Right. It could be something else. It could be something much bigger that they just aren't facing. I was like, oh, it's not a problem. My gambling's not a problem. Yeah, I know. I spent $10,000 on gambling last year, but it's not a problem. No, it's not a problem. Right. Or it could be, unfortunately, in this day and age, pornography and other kind of addictions are rampant, and so the easy access for people. So, whatever that is, it's, you don't have to announce it to the world if you don't want to, but you need to be very sober with yourself and say, I'm lying about how I eat, or I'm lying about how I spend my time, or I'm lying about, my integrity, or how I actually treat other people in my relationships, or I'm lying, whatever that is, where you're not being honest, or I'm denying my age and thinking I can keep running this company, at 80 as well as I ran it when I was 40, right? And I have the energy. No, well, you don't.
Definitely.
So like get clear and remove the debris, because there's somewhere you're probably not being very straight with yourself. Or if you need to, another good piece of advice, ask your girlfriend, ask your spouse, and ask your best friends, if there was one thing you wanted to tell me about myself that you think maybe I may not be aware of, and I promise not to take offense, or to get, defend myself. What is that one thing you would say to what I should stop doing, or what I should start doing? What would you say to me? What's that piece of advice you want to give me? And when they give it to you, it's not like let them give it to you and then say, yeah, you're right, or start a conversation about it. Say, just ask for the advice, but don't talk about it afterwards, because just let yourself simmer on it without no, you're actually wrong. Actually, you used to give me this advice, but you're wrong. I actually do that. I already work out. What are you talking about? You're saying I don't work out enough, or whatever that might be, right? So admit it, so hear it and rest with it, and not rebuttal, and own it. And maybe they'll give you some clues and some gifts in there. The best advice I've ever gotten was from people that tell me things I didn't want to hear,
That's how I know it's true most of the time.
I was looking for a winter job at 17 at an insurance agency. My father, one of his clients, had an insurance agency, and so I talked to him, and I said, I really could use a job, and I wonder if I could work for you part time. And he says, can you type? And I said, so I don't know how to type. And he's like, well, if you learn how to type, that would be great. And I walked away, shrugged my shoulders and sad. I'm like, gosh, you won't give me a job. But he planted a seed, and then over the next year and a half or two, I took a typing class, and there was another guy in the class, and it was all women in the class. And I was like, okay, out of place. But I'm like, I'm going to stick it. I'm going to stick it out. So I stuck it out, and the guy that came in there with me, he dropped out. So now I'm alone. And so by the end of the whole program, a lady and I were the two best typists in the class. We were tied, as the two best typists out of the class. And so I took that. Was initially kind of depressing, and kind of like a put off. He didn't hire me, and he found an excuse to. It gave me a life skill early that has been invaluable. That I can, type without looking at the keyboard and having to, hunt and peck or any of that. But that only happened because of what he told me that I didn't want to hear.
Yeah. And then you acted upon it, which is the biggest part. Because I think a lot of people will go through and hear that, and then they disguise it and tell the stories that they want to tell themselves, where it's, oh, no.
Yes. It's because he was a jerk, or it's because, he didn't want to hire me, or he's just trying to, whatever, right?
Just crazy. Because I think it's been a common theme, I think, throughout this whole podcast is one of the fastest ways to go through and grow is if you're able to be self-aware.
Yes.
Constantly.
Yes. Yeah. Always be looking for advice. Always stay humble. Always be open to learning and growing and changing what you do, how you do it. Right. And, but there, when it comes to the new startup entrepreneurs, I would really, really, really emphasize spend a little bit of time, and it seems completely counterintuitive, but sort of visualizing your exit, what that looks like, and mapping it out a little bit. Like, okay, so if I'm not sure which business to start, and I've got 3 options I'm down to, how do those 3 play out as far as exit value? Well, is one going to have a greater market value than the other? Is one going to be, it's going to be worth my while? Because it's sad for me to see somebody who's brilliant. They're brilliant. I mean, they are so smart, and they're running an auto parts retail business. They're brilliant, and they get 20 cents on the dollar compared to someone over here who's in the popular industry, that's one that's in demand, and then also maybe it has more reoccurring revenues. And so for multiple reasons, it's way more valuable. And yet they both worked equally hard, but one of them sitting on a very healthy retirement, and the other one is like barely making ends meet. And all by the horse they picked for the race. It's like picking a thoroughbred versus picking a Clydesdale. That's like, you want to go to the racetrack, and you say, I like Clydesdales, they look cool. So you decide you're going to race in your Clydesdale, and I show up in a thoroughbred. I mean, who's going to win that race, right? And yet we do that one with businesses we start all the time. We do the same thing. Like, don't pick a Clydesdale if it's a speed race. Now, if it's who can haul the largest load, you pick the thoroughbred, you're going to lose, because you can haul the hay or whatever you're hauling.
So know the game you're playing.
Yeah, know the game you're playing, and so use that. Let that influence the direction you go, and look at the lifetime value of the customer. Don't be distracted by the flashy big dollars, the one-off big dollars, as opposed to the lifetime value, because it's so much more, it'd be worth so much more to you. It's incomprehensible.
If you had to go back to yourself when you were 20 years old, what's this is a question we asked our last guest, I think I really liked, is if you had to go back to yourself at 20 years old, what's a question you wish he would ask himself?
Why aren't you in business for yourself? And the reason I'll say that is I had worked in corporate America, some great Fortune 500 companies. Then I worked in entrepreneurial startup companies where I was on the ground floor starting the company as an employee, and built one company out to 120 million, and I was foundational to building it, and just the key linchpin in the whole journey, right? So, and you only have one life, and you have more energy in your 20s and 30s and 40s than you are going to have in your 50s and 60s and 70s. That's just like human nature. So your time is precious. And so if you work for someone, even as a sales executive, you might have unlimited potential income at that company, but the comp plan could change. You could no longer be employed by that company. You could build it, and they let you go. Things can happen. And so rather than be a mercenary hired gun who's getting paid by the hour, invest in yourself and in your future. And I had grown up in a very poverty-stricken family, and even though my father was an entrepreneur, it was very difficult. Many almost went bankrupt. There were many challenges they had, and that left a mark on me. And so I wanted more financial security. So I thought financial security is going to come from being an employee, and ultimately it's not. And so I took off on the entrepreneurial journey. But if I would have recognized that earlier, I would have done it earlier and said, look, I'm giving the best years of my life. I'm giving a maximum energy. I'm coming all these creative long-term solutions that are being embedded in the company and being distributed nationwide, and making, multimillionaires out of a lot of people. And I'm just the hired gun, getting a big salary, but comparatively, it's peanuts compared to the big game. And so, have faith in yourself and make those sacrifices early, because now you have the freedom, the energy. You're not, you don't have as many fixed responsibilities, maybe as far as, children, a big mortgage, a big debt, et cetera, maybe a more opportunity to take those gambles. Take them and grow your own company, and, live your dream and develop your capital and your net worth, because long-term appreciation, the capital gains tax is much lower than income tax. So you want as much on the capital gains tax as possible. And that comes through being an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. Take your shot.
Yep. Take a shot.
Well, thank you for being on. This has been an absolute pleasure going through and doing all this. I think this will help our audience quite a bit. Just because I think there are a lot of mistakes when someone goes through and starts a business, going through and like not keeping the end in mind. But then also like when they do get to that spot where it's, okay, how do I go through and structure this? Like where I can't go through an exit, should I exit like right now? So yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to come here and do this with us. My pleasure. Glad to help. And I've been on the business development side and superstar on that side, and on the entrepreneurial side. And now I do merger and acquisition advising. But I will tell you, making that leap over from that super salesperson to an entrepreneur can really be worthwhile. So obviously you have to take a calculated risk, but it's certainly worth taking the calculated risk in the long run, because then at least you're the driver of your own ship. 100%. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and thank you, Edward, again for being on. Guys, if you are thinking about starting a business, please go through, give this book a read, Exit Like a Winner. We'll add the link below. Man, there's so many people that just fall into the pitfalls of starting a business, exiting. It's a brutal game and world. Edward just comes from so much experience, as you guys have seen here today. Please give that book a read so you don't make the same pitfalls and mistakes as thousands and arguably millions of people make in this business space all across the world. This will help you shortcut to the goals and dreams that you hope for, and can go through and fulfill those. If you are a sales rep thinking about starting your own business, or just want to be around people who are chasing the same dreams and goals as you to create something that's yours, please go to Rep2Owner.com, click apply now, or join our community, The Back Room, and we'll see you next time.